What's up, dog? Welcome back to another episode. Today we have a very special guest, MKA's Malaysian Kennel Association's past president. Woo! Yeah, so MKA's former president or immediate past president, Mr. Gopi Krishnan, has also a kennel of his own called Hacienda. He breeds and shows Dachshunds, right? He has titled, I think, 100, almost 154 champions around the world. 104 are which locally bred. Am I correct?
Yep.
Yeah. And this is a very a perfect CV for a breeder, especially, and someone who could definitely show the dogs around the world. I think it definitely deserves another round of applause. Yeah, we got low budget
I'm
sound
embarrassed
system.
now.
But yeah, so Mr. Gopi Krishnan, um, first question we do want to ask you is basically how and why did you get into Dachshunds or breeding or like what's your backstory with this Hacienda kennel?
Okay, cool. Firstly, don't call me Mister. That's not my IT, so just call me Gopi. Okay, that's my name. Yeah, I prefer to be referred to as. We've always owned dogs in the family. From your local mart, mainly local marts. We've had a few pedigrees. I was then studying in the UK, and love for dogs was, um, still there, and I started to go to dog shows there. My grandparents had owned Dachshunds when I was a little kid, so I remember them. So, but we actually started in German Shepherds. This body was not made for running. So after a short stint in German Shepherds, we had two show German Shepherds, which we bought quite by accident, and showed them. And then basically the bug bit. And so whilst I was in the UK, I did some research and managed to find some really good breeders of Dachshunds. And that's how I started. I got my dogs there. I had a couple my last year of uni. And then I brought them back to Malaysia when I came back, and it sort of took off from there.
Oh, that's very very interesting from how you had large breeds to a small breed itself.
Well, let me tell you something about Dachshunds. They're a big dog in a little body, and no one told them they're a little dog. So they're very much like a big dog. So anyway,
Do you still have Dachshunds at home or?
yeah, not so many. I've cut down a lot. I mainly have some oldies. I'm working in partnership with a friend in the Philippines, and so
Okay.
we co-breed, and she has most of the dogs, and I have a couple of oldies here, and a couple of dogs that I own around the world with other people.
Oh wow. Yeah, that's pretty common, huh?
Yeah.
For sure. But yeah, Mr. Gopi as well serves on the FCI Asia and Pacific board as the vice president. So we actually have a couple questions in regards to how you got into MKA and how did you what was your ways up going up to
Came
president?
back in '98. Came back
Mm.
in '98 and started showing dogs here. I was already showing in the UK my last couple of years. Then I became actively involved here. Started serving. That time we had Selangor branch. Served in the Selangor branch, and then got involved. Like helping with organizing dog shows and things like that. And then it just sort of took off from there. I was reading more active, and then stood for elections. Got elected onto the board, and from there it's just sort of gone on from there really. But there was never really a desire, but I don't know how it happened. But anyway, for my
Yeah, sort of got off the flow, right? But yeah, so we do have. I mean, for the general population, we kind of had this question of exactly what is MKA, what does MKA do as an association or whatever.
Sure. So the MKA is basically a registry body for pedigree dogs. It is the only registry body in Malaysia, and it's the only one that's recognized internationally. Internationally, We are a member of all the FCI. And the FCI has a membership of nearly 100 countries. And then we are also have reciprocal agreements with the English Kennel Club and also the American Kennel Club and other global organizations. So our primary focus is actually to promote pedigree dogs. That's what we are about, promoting the breeding and registering of pedigree dogs. And as a side thing, of course, we organize activities, dog shows, dog sports in the last 15, 20 years, which are all activities that people who keep pedigree dogs would be involved in. I mean, dog shows are a little bit different because dog shows are assessing of your stock. So, you know, all the dogs have a breed standard. And so a show is basically about seeing how close that dog that you have is to the breed standard. The breed standard is basically the blueprint of the perfect dog for that breed. So as a member of the FCI, we recognize over 350 breeds globally. So, you know, that's part of the agreement that we recognize all those breeds. Of course, we don't have all those breeds here, but we recognize them. And that's principally the function of the MKA. The activities are more to promote it, like the dog shows is to promote. So people get to assess. So a judge who is trained and qualified will assess your dog and see how close it meets the breed standard. And so that's how they give them awards, they give them grading, things like that. And that basically is about assessing breeding stock. A dog show is about seeing how suited your dog is to be bred. So whether it should be bred or not, because not everything that is a pedigree should be bred. There are some dogs that we shouldn't breed from. And that's what a dog show does. Dog sports are more the social side of things. And I mean, dog shows also are social, but dog sports are more the social side of the training, the obedience, agility, dances with dogs, now trick dogs is the latest we've got. So those are more to involve people in the activities of doing something with their pedigree dog. Or with dog sports, it's open to non-pedigrees as well. So it's to all dog lovers. Confirmation dog shows or dog shows are purely for pedigree dogs. They've got to be registered. They've got to have a pedigree certificate. Principally, they're promoting pedigree dogs. That's what we stand for, is pedigree dogs. And the MKA is nearly 100 years old. So we're actually in Asia, the oldest kennel club in Asia. We were set up by the British, you know, in the days when they occupied us. And the club has continued from there. Of course, it went from their hands into Malaysian, you know, so we run it now, or we have for the last, like, 90 years. And that's how it works. So that's principally the function of the MKA.
Right. So, like, I mean, there are a couple of points I also wanted to touch on in terms of different breeds, in terms of sports and show and all these different things. But I think, again, back to the general public and even myself, I personally would like to know how I could read a pedigree. What is a pedigree? A certification, I would assume, right? But what does it mean to me as an owner?
Okay, so pedigree dog or pedigree certificate?
Pedigree, both. I want to talk about both. Yeah.
So a pedigree dog is basically a dog that has been bred for a specific trait. So whether it's hunting, whether it's as a companion, whether it's for guard work. So all these dogs, every pedigree dog has a function. So it was not just bred because someone fancied a dog that looked like a sausage with short legs, or because they wanted a fierce dog. All the dogs, every pedigree dog was bred for a function. They were created, or they were bred to pick up particular traits that they were good at. So whether it was hunting, or whether it was retrieving, or whether it was guard work. So that's the purpose of a pedigree dog. So they have a function. So they were bred to do a specific task, and each of those, and so their coat, the coat fits in with their function. So it wasn't for fashion. It wasn't because someone just liked this color or liked this coat type. But every single pedigree dog, there's a specific reason why they have the coat they have, why they have the color they have, why they should be the size they are, why their tail should be such a way, why their ears should be such a way, whether it's, you know, long or short or cropped or whatever it is. Everything had a function. And what a pedigree certificate is basically, it's a birth certificate. It's a certification of your dog's pedigree. So it basically tells you that this dog is of pedigree origin. That means that the father and the mother are from the same breed. They have not been mixed with any other breed, but they are pure. So it's pure of that one breed. So for example, with a golden retriever, you have a pedigree. So our 4th-generation pedigree, which is what you get from the MKA, will give you the lineage of your puppy for 4 generations, giving you the names of all those, its ancestors, its parents, grandparents on both sides, going right up to great-grandparents. With that information, of course, being like a birth certificate for simpler terms to understand, it has the date of birth, the color, the owner of that particular puppy, and the details pertaining to that puppy, those sort of information. And also in certain breeds where there are health tests or things like that, those are also stated. So for example, the parents have been hip and elbow sawed, they've had genetic tests done, their DNA profile, all that information is contained in a pedigree certificate. So by looking at it, you'll understand what it means. It also carries titles. So say if they became a champion in a dog show or an obedience champion, all that information is there in the pedigree certificate. So you know that what the puppy that you're buying is from pedigree stock, meaning that there's no interbreeding, there's no other breed, and you know exactly. So you know that you would know whether it was how close the breeding was, because if you saw suddenly that, hey, this dog's father is also his grandfather, then you'd be like, hey, they've done inbreeding or things like that, or her father is also her female father is also the father of this puppy, then you know that they've made it a father to a daughter. So it helps you to understand and not to mix. So when you come to breeding, you would not breed something that was closely related unless you knew what you were doing. So it's to avoid all that and for you to have an assurance that what you have is a pedigree dog, a pure pedigree stock that's been registered for. I mean, most pedigree dogs you can trace back for a couple of 100 years at least, if not longer, because they've existed for that long.
Interesting. Yeah.
All right.
I mean,
And actually, question. So like, in terms of, let's say MKA, which are like pedigree, right?
Okay.
So a lot of what I noticed, a lot of breeds in Malaysia, or even dog owners in Malaysia, like the breed standard isn't as like there isn't any awareness, or probably like minimal awareness, of the whole breed standard. Like nobody, let's talk about Dobermans, because obviously I have a Doberman.
Okay.
And so they have like a certain breed standard. They have to be square, then they have like the parallel muzzle and all the kind of stuff. There's the whole breed standard that like when people look at Doberman, they just see Doberman. That's it, like crop ear, crop tail.
Yeah.
People facing a specific breed. In Malaysia, they don't do this. I'm thinking probably because they don't understand, or they aren't aware of the whole breed standards and stuff like that. And I just want to ask, like, how is it important? Like, how can we explain how this can be important for owners to to create all this kind of awareness?
Great question, and it's something that is very often confused, as you said, and also something that people are unaware of, completely unaware of. So as I mentioned earlier, a breed standard is the blueprint. So it's like the plan, So it describes as you said, it describes every single part of a specific breed of dog, from the tip of its nose to the end of its tail, and everything in between, including the colors that are allowed, including the coat texture, the coat type, all those things, the angles, the height, all these things. And these were all developed for function, for work, okay? So these were all done specifically because the dogs would work. In those days, people could not just own a dog because they fancied it. They were not rich enough, or they couldn't afford it. I mean, life was such that, so the dogs had to work. They had to earn their living. And so every single breed of dog was developed for a function. And that's what the breed standard is. Of course, you want to make sure that the pet doesn't have any glaring faults or disqualifications from the breed standard. The breed standards are available. I mean, if you Google them, if you go FCI breed standard, whatever breed, it's there. Unfortunately, to the untrained person or a person who's not studied a breed in detail, it's quite confusing because it's so detailed. It gives angles, it gives measurements, it's very specific. Your general pet is never going to conform. So the reason why we keep breeding, why I keep breeding, is because I'm trying to breed the perfect dog. I've, 25 years or more of doing it. I still not, in my eyes, I've come close, but every dog has little things that are not perfect, right? But that's the challenge. That's why we keep breeding. For me anyway, because I want to breed, I want to breed an ideal dog. And we keep going. And people go for 30, 40 years. You find specimens are closer. So you'll never get the perfect dog because it's not an exact science. It's breeding dogs, it's breeding animals. So you can never say, 2 + 2 = 4. It won't, because there's going to be slight variation. But certain things in the breed standard are important to understand. So for example, when it says a coat type, and I give you a classic example and I see it and it irritates me to no end. People buying woolly huskies, right? The coat of a Siberian husky is not meant to be woolly, okay? Because if it was woolly, if it worked in the Arctic, it got snowed, it'll die because it's got no undercoat, a harsh undercoat to keep the body temperature, to keep the dog warm. But you're arguing with me, but we live in Malaysia, there's no snow, there's no Arctic conditions. Why is it important? But it's still important because even in our heat, it's harder for a woolly coated dog to regulate temperature because they were bred, they sort of engineered nature in a way to adapt to those things. And despite the fact that the dog may live in Malaysia, but it still needs that coat type, it would naturally drop the certain amount of undercoat to be able to cope with our heat, right? Most show Siberian Huskies in Malaysia live in air conditioning. So they would have a full coat. So you would see them how you would see them in the US or Canada or any sort of cold country. But when you buy something that's not that for a specific reason, other things are health reasons. For example, my own breed, when you have a piebald, which means a lot of white on the dog, when you breed piebald, they end up having blindness. They end up being born without limbs, okay, because it's a genetic defect. And that's where understanding the breed standard comes in. So if it says these are the acceptable colors, there was a reason. And most of the time, if it wasn't for function, it is also for health. So in the 100, 200 years, health has become more important. And the welfare of these animals, So why is there, you don't want a blue French bulldog? Because they end up with skin problems and coat diseases because it's not an acceptable color. When you've had colors that have been bred for hundreds of years and then suddenly someone thinks, oh, I quite like this fancy thing and they bring a different color, it brings in other problems with it. That's what people don't understand. So a breed standard to Joe public on the street who just wants an interest in a pedigree dog, they need to understand that the dog in principle needs to conform to the main thing, coat type, color, that sort of those sort of important things. Specifications, they're not. That comes down more to then you want a healthy dog. You want a dog that's been bred properly with a good temperament, that's been socialized well, that the parents that are registered, that have also conformed in some way to the breed standard. Because otherwise it's like, I want to buy a Mercedes, but I want to put Lamborghini bits in it. You know what I mean? And then I want to say it's authentic. Well, it won't work that way, right? I'm trying to use examples. I know they're a bit extreme, but just trying so that someone watching this who doesn't understand this says, that's too much for me. I don't need all that. And this is the thing that a lot of puppy farmers do. They say, you don't need all this. That's just to show people. Don't worry about this. You don't need all this. But it is important. Unfortunately, this is the sad part, is that human beings like something unique. Oh, I want something rare, so they want a woolly husky. Why? It looks cute. But they don't understand is that as that dog grows up, as it grows a full coat in our temperate climate, if that dog does not live in air conditioning, it is going to suffer because it has an incorrect coat. It has a coat that traps too much heat and does not regulate the body, doesn't allow the body to be regulated and stuff like that. But functionality. I mean, if you put functionality aside, you've got to look at the health and the welfare of the animal. And a lot of the breed standards are in line with the health and welfare. So why a particular length of muzzle? So the dog can breathe. If the muzzle was too short, then it's going to have problems breathing. If the muzzle is too long, then, you know, every bit is not, as I said, it wasn't because someone just woke up that day and decided, oh, I want to breed a short-faced, a brachycephalic dog. Well, everything had a function. But that's why the breed standards tell you how much, what angle, all those things. But to a general person, read through like AKC breed standards, for example. It's quite simple. A and KC, they're all quite straightforward.
Yeah.
AKC, the American Kennel Club. And they're less detailed than the SCI. But at least you have an idea of what this dog that you're buying should look, how puppy farmers are, in my definition, people who are selling dogs for profit. So they do not breed because they have a passion for a particular breed, but they're breeding for profit. So they're breeding for a market basically purely to sell. But that's how they survive. Their existence comes from selling dogs, okay? But they have no passion for that breed. They have no love or interest in developing the breed. Like I was telling you, I'm breeding to find the perfect dog. But these guys are just breeding for profit. So they're not bothered if it conforms. That they love the rare things. And most of the rare things, this is something I would like to say, most of the rare things are actually a fault. It's what the breed standard calls a fault. It's not what should be in the ideal dog. Can that live as a pet? Yes, it can. But when you start having multiple of those and breeding those together, then you're going to end up down the track with health issues, with problems. And that's what people don't understand. You buy a woolly husky, you want to breed another woolly, you're producing problems. When you start to crossbreed, when you start breeding Malamutes and Huskies, and you're putting in two different breeds that have two different sets of strengths, but at the same time, two different sets of weaknesses too. There are faults. Every breed of dog has faults. And when you find those without really understanding recipe for disaster, which is why we recommend pedigree dogs to keep buying. And people sell this wrong notion that, oh, if I mix breeds, then I get more hybrid vigor. Hey, these dogs, Dobermans, for example, have existed for hundreds of years. These bred just the Dobermans. And are they unhealthy? Are they falling apart? Are they? No. I mean, you know, I'm talking about people who breed them properly, right? People who keep them properly. They're not. But this is the thing of whole hybrid vigor. If you understand animal husbandry and breeding, why in horses, the closest breedings, those breedings, even with other farm animals, those that carry similar traits and strengths and are related actually produce better stock. But they understand the science behind it. They don't just go and mate a father and a daughter or a grandfather and a granddaughter without understanding what, you know, the strengths and the weaknesses are. So these are people that cleverly study both the pedigrees, both the actual traits of the dog, and then make a decision. So a lot of people, and as I said, this sort of annoys me, get carried off with this, carried away with this, oh, it's unique, it's rare. And then most people, sadly, most people don't research the breed. They just say, oh, cute, oh, you know, so-and-so had one, I want one. And they just go into a breed without understanding. I think even before getting to breed standards, people would understand, why are they getting a dog? Why that breed? You know, if you want to get a Rottweiler and you are not a sort of person that can control a Rottweiler, you know, it's a guard dog. It was bred to guard. So automatically, instinctively does what hundreds of years it was bred to do, which is to guard its people, right? So I think an understanding of people knowing what breeds they're getting into.
But in reality, is it possible to sort of control this, like in terms of breeding? Someone who would breed aimlessly for no reason and profit-wise, is there something that we could do?
If there's no market for them, if people stop buying these unique, which are actually false, they're all false in the breed standard. If people stop buying these, then people will stop breeding them. If there's no market for something, then there's going to be no seller, because eventually the guys will drop off. So that's what we've been trying to do at MKA. during this whole COVID season and before, is to educate the public.
Yes.
Is to educate them. I mean, I'll just go back to one thing, which is a misconception. People think that an MKA pedigree certificate is a health certificate. That means that it guarantees that this dog is the best of the best. No, it doesn't. Please understand that. Our job is to register, is to put a genealogy, to produce for every registered dog, pedigree dog. But that does not mean that that dog, the parents have been health tested, or it's come from good stock, or it's been temperament tested, or that the puppy has been cared for and nurtured, socially and also physically to do it. No, that's your job. That's where we've tried to educate people. Please understand, a pedigree certificate just means that you know that it's been well bred, that it's not been, father to a daughter breeding to produce your puppy or these sort of things, and it's come from pure stock. And secondly, but what it doesn't mean is, it doesn't mean the health of the dog. That's where you have to find reputable breeders, people who are passionate about that breed, not the sort of people that have 20 different breeds for sale and are advertising these different puppies, usually sort of held up like that, a picture of them. People who can't show you the mother and father. The most important thing is, can I see his parents? Why do you want to meet his parents? Oh, because I want to see what the mother looks like. Does she look like she's been breeding every single 6 months of her life? Or is it that, you follow the rules in terms of, I'm talking welfare rules, I'm not talking about MKA rules, but to breed no more than 3 or 4 litters in a lifetime. How young, how old is it that she's been bred from? Is she in good condition, or has she got skin problems, issues? Is she nervous? Is she, wary of humans? Because all these traits are passed on to puppies. And some people don't get. That's why it's important to visit the breeder, to see the puppies in their natural and what they look like. And then you know for sure, at least you have an idea of what you're going to get 6 months, 10 months down the road when this cute puppy grows up into an adult. So yeah, I just want to clarify the thing that a pedigree certificate is not a health certificate, but it's just a guarantee of the parentage and of the pureness of that breed, that it is purebred.
Are there any I don't know if MKA would implement something like this, but in terms of health wise for the, like, in Germany, I assume like the SV or WSV, they would sort of have standards of how and what you can do to ensure that you're breeding properly, right? Is this something that we could see in the future of MKA or whatnot?
As I mentioned, the difficulty in that is that our guarantee or our agreement with all the other kennel clubs, which is the same issue around the world, is that we have to register pedigree dogs. So if you've got 2 pedigree dogs and you come to register them, we have to. Our job is to encourage people to do health tests, to do these things, to be genuine about it. But that's why we go to the public and we are educating the public so they are more aware. So the public is more educated. So when someone goes to buy a dog, they're going to ask the right questions. And by them knowing, having knowledge is power. When you have knowledge and you ask the breeder, oh, how many litters does this had? When was the last litter? Why does she look nervous? Why you can assess all these things. And a more educated buyer or buyer that's more aware is going to eventually, so if you go and look, the puppies look nervous, they're scared, you go to touch them and they're urinating because they're so scared of you, and the mother is like that, and they look a bit suspect. Are you going to buy it? No, chances are you won't, right? You're going to walk away. And the more people that walk away because they have knowledge about what a healthy puppy should look like, what an ideal home where you breed dogs looks like, that's going to stop these people who are profiting. But the more we have of people who just don't care, who, I want a dog, it's like Lazada and Shopee, right? I want it, I order it, I want it by 3 days time. So if you have that attitude, then you're going to end up with all these sort of things. But I waited years to get a dog from certain people because I wanted that line, I wanted that thing. Even my first dog, I had to wait 12 months before they had a litter that was suitable, something like that. But most people are not prepared to wait. That's the other issue. We live in a generation that wants it yesterday. So they are prepared to compromise these things because of they want it now. But what they don't realize is that they're then going to have a lifetime of problems.
Yes.
Because, you know, it's like
Correct.
when dog gets sick and it lives 10 to 15 years and it's a sickly dog and you're spending all the money on vet bills, then what people do? They abandon the dog. They think, oh, I can't deal with it. So I just go and dump it. You know, pause or HCA or whatever. Or worse, still on the side of the road, you know, and that sort of stuff. So controlling, I'd rather we gave people, educated the public and let the public be aware. And you know, this is why doing shows like this is really important, because we want people to listen and understand what it's about, to truly not be, you know, have lies told to them, but for them to know what a pedigree is, what it means, you know, how they should be a more astute buyer, to, you know, to ask the right questions. You know, these are the stuff that we are focusing on education, because if people are educated, then you're going to eventually cut down on all these people that are profiting from selling dogs.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, I want to understand this correctly, because obviously, like overseas, like let's say the UK, the US, how they practice, like let's say breeding. So how they sell their litter, they have to make sure that, you know, like it's big there, that they need to obviously know the parents, they need to know that they have been tested, both parents have been health tested, and, you know, like to understand the whole health and genetic line, and so on and so forth. So we in Malaysia, would we be able to, as you know how Brandon said, like would we be able to go into that direction, like MKA just put that clause?
So I have to correct you. It's only very specific breeds, only German Shepherds in Germany and a few other breeds in Germany that are developed in Germany that have these tests. Every other kennel club around the world, including the UK Kennel Club, including American Kennel Club, they do not mandate any tests, because the onus falls on the breeders. To be honest, the breeders have an interest. Because you must remember, this was developed, this sport or this interest was developed for people who had a genuine interest in producing a dog that conformed to the breed standard, to do that function, to be worked or whatever. So none of us, no one except a few German breeds mandate that. But even it's only those that want to go for competition. A lot of the others can still be registered without all that. So actually, we are not doing anything that is, well, the same thing is going on globally. The same issues. There are puppy farmers in the UK. There are puppy farmers in the US. In Europe, it's all over. Australia. It's not something limited to Malaysia. And likewise, there's also people in the UK and US who impulsive buy. They, oh, it's cute. They see it on, I've even seen dogs advertised on Shopee. They see it in the classifieds, and then they just, okay, I want it, pick it up. They don't bother to find out, to research about the breed, to research the breeder. To ask, who are you? Why are you breeding dogs?
Yes.
Like, hey, Brandon, why are you breeding this dog? You know, is it like, oh, because I want to keep something for my next generation, or, you know, I'm training for this, and this. So I want to, you know, and the excess puppies I'm selling as pets. So then you understand why they're breeding. But when someone is doing this as a career, or they're doing this basically to fund their livelihood, then you'll understand very quickly. And actually, if you ask simple questions, you'll find the answers. But most people don't really want to, or they don't know better. You know, they just buy on impulse, cute, adorable, and they never bother to find out about the health.
I mean,
what health issues, does it have elbow things? I'm not saying every pedigree dog is perfect. They have issues. That's why you buy from a responsible breeder who would health test, who would do the genetic testing, do these sort of things to ensure that the puppies that they're producing are going away from these issues, or do not carry these traits. Dogs take it up. So you would find something that's clear. So the onus comes down to breeders to be responsible, and then ultimately that goes back down to the buyer understanding.
So like, let's say, like for what would you advise for, let's say, buyers when they go, like, let's say they see these puppies, these little puppies, they are available, and then they go to the like breeders, or they ask these questions. What would you like recommend or advise? Simple questions
I've mentioned a couple, like how many puppies in the litter, why did you breed this litter? Seeing them, your eyes will tell you lots of things. When you see the environment the puppies are kept in, if they live in a cage, they've never seen solid ground, they've never seen grass, that sort of thing, it'll give you an idea of what sort of life they've led. And in a chicken coop, then is that really something you want to pay money for? No. So understanding these things, a lot of people say, oh, the stories are amazing. Oh, I just, my male, he just got to my female, so we had, like, this is the same story they tell year after year after year, same people, right? Ask them questions about culture. Why is the reason about this breed? What makes this breed, your hot dog? What's so special about a Doberman versus a Belgian Shepherd? So when you ask them questions like that, and they can't tell you straightforward, and most of us are intelligent enough to judge whether someone's being genuine.
Yeah.
It's like for you, it's like, okay, it's Doberman only. I know there's like no whatever, but you can tell me at least 5 reasons why you love Doberman. Brandon can tell me at least 10 reasons why he loves Belgian Shepherds, right? Simple stuff like that. I mean, we have listened. There's a whole series, there's a couple of series we've done, which is on the MKA Facebook page, that goes through questions that you can ask as a potential buyer, to ask a potential breeder, to basically weed out who is a hobby breeder or a passionate breeder, and who is a commercial breeder.
Yeah.
So
I
yeah.
I actually have another question. So like, let's take me for example, right? So I got let's say I have a Doberman, right? Or I don't think I should take me as an example. I'm not sure. Let's just say.
Let's just roll with this conversation.
Yeah, let's roll with it. Yeah, okay. So let's say, oh, okay, I got a Doberman, and then she is, obviously I love her, but let's just pretend that I'm a general public, and just be like, can I, because I'm not a breeder, can I, just a random individual, start to breed a Doberman? And in what sense would you say this is a backyard breeding and versus proper breeding?
I would class you as a hobby breeder, because you've got one dog, one female. You don't have to constantly to make money. So a puppy farmer or a puppy trader is someone who just has 10 dogs over and over again just to produce puppies. They are not looking at, okay, what are the faults in the female? What do I need to improve? So I need to find a male that is stronger in this area, or the male's got this, and they don't have a collection of males that they can use. Go interested in male, female on heat breed. That's all. They're not bothered anything else. So that's a puppy farmer, and purely just breeding for profit. So they have no interest in the breed. You I would say, why a hobby breeder? Because obviously you've got a female that you love, and you obviously are devoted to this breed to some extent, and now you want to breed this female. But the questions, and you bring up a very interesting thing. The question I ask you is, why are you breeding from this female? Like, is she good enough to be bred from? I know you love her. I know she's dear to you. And most people say, oh, but I'm scared later when she's old and she dies, and I want to teach my children about puppies. Are you please? Okay?
Yeah.
But my advice to someone who says, okay, I can't argue with sentiment. So you love this dog, you want something from her, I understand. But my advice would be, go and find a serious breeder, someone who's passionate about this breed, who has knowledge about this breed. Let them see a female, check the pedigree, make sure, she's reasonably well bred, and then get their advice on, okay, what male should I breed it to? Not every male is suited. So what are the faults in this female? So what does she have? Oh, she's got this issue, she's got that. Okay, so we find a male that is strong in that would overcome that thing, hopefully. 90% of the time you're able to do it. 10% is possible step in finding a male that is suitable for this female. You're not putting, I see this adverts, and again, it drives me insane. Oh, my male, he's ready, looking for
I saw that a lot.
and then oh, my female, can I come and breed with your male? Why? They have no reason, they have no genuine reason for wanting to improve the breed, right? They have no knowledge, first of all, to improve the breed. Secondly, they have no interest in improve the breed. They just want a lot of people, so they pay 2,000 for a dog. I don't want to say what breed or anything. They say pay 2,000 for a dog, and then they have this female, and they think, she is not so bad. I can make some easy income. I breed one litter. If I get 5 puppies times 2, 10,000 tax free.
Yep.
Right? And that lures them in. And then they have a very easy litter, no issues, and they start doing this more regularly until they face issues, until the female needs a C-section or the puppy is not presented correctly, it gets stuck in the birth canal. The female doesn't recover from the C-section, she dies. Then money. So their breeder, someone who shows their dog, someone who's passionate about this breed, and say, listen, I'm thinking of breeding my female. And now, if your female has some glaring fault that should not be bred from, they should advise you, please spay her from her, because this is a genetic defect, and you're going to produce this defect again. Okay, there are certain things that you can breed out. There are certain genetic defects that you cannot, which is why in the old days, they would have been put to sleep or they would not have been bred from, because they do not conform, right? But nowadays that we humanize our pets and so they're part of our family, nothing wrong with that. I expect you to love your dog, to be concerned for it. But you have to understand that breeding dogs is a different game. It's not about, oh, my little foo-foo that I want babies from, because I want to give her the experience of having puppies. She can live a perfectly happy life without having puppies. Let me tell you, she's probably she's probably happier without having puppies. Or people who think, oh, my male, he needs to become a man, he needs to experience this. Please lah. He doesn't need to. He can live his whole life happily without knowing. Sometimes we project our own wants and desires onto our dogs, which is so wrong, right? So they don't need to.
Yes.
So if you've got this Doberman that you love, go find a Doberman breeder that's passionate and ask them for advice, about what male they have there that could use, or should you even breed from this female? That's what you should be doing.
Yeah.
So anyone who wants to be a hobby breeder for the sake of sentiment, but my advice is always don't let sentiment come into dog breeding, because I'm not saying be heartless, but I'm saying you've got to be sensible about it. So if she's got an undershot bite, a badly undershot bite by one inch, she can be someone's pet, but she should not be bred from, because she's going to produce more of those, right? And then you've got generations and generations of puppies that are going to suffer from this, and then someone else has their beloved Fifi that they want to breed from.